I stood frozen as I watched my daughter-in-law secretly sliding my wedding photo behind the kitchen cabinet. Why hide it when I pulled the cabinet away? I didn't just find the photo. I discovered an entire secret stash, a burner phone, spare house keys, financial documents, and a notebook filled with handwriting I recognized as my own son's. That's when I understood they didn't just want to erase my memories, they wanted to erase me. My name is Eleanor Whitaker, though everyone calls me Nora. At 68. I thought I'd seen enough of life to recognize when something wasn't right. After 43 years of marriage to Grant and raising our son Ethan, I'd developed what my mother used to call woman's intuition. That morning, in late September, standing in my own kitchen in Port Townsend, Washington, that intuition screamed louder than it ever had before. Grant and I had built a comfortable retirement here, in this craftsman-style house overlooking the Puget Sound. The morning fog would roll in from the water, and I'd watch it dissipate while sipping coffee from the same blue mug I'd used for 20 years. Grant spent his mornings in the workshop behind the house, crafting furniture pieces that our neighbours occasionally commissioned. I volunteered twice a week at the Hearthline Community Library, helping with their literacy programs. Life had settled into pleasant, predictable rhythms. Ethan and Vanessa visited most weekends, driving up from Seattle where Ethan worked as a financial analyst, and Vanessa managed investments for some private equity firm she never quite explained. They'd arrive Saturday mornings around 10, Vanessa's designer handbag swinging from her arm, Ethan carrying a bottle of wine or fresh flowers. We'd have lunch on the back deck if weather permitted, catching up on their busy city lives. That particular Saturday started differently. I'd woken early, around 5:30 a.m., unable to fall back asleep. Grant was snoring softly beside me, so I slipped out of bed and headed to the kitchen to start the coffee. The house was still dark, autumn dawn coming later each day. I was reaching for the light switch when I heard movement in the kitchen. Vanessa stood by the kitchen cabinet, her back to me. She was still in her silk pajamas. They must have arrived late last night after we'd gone to bed. In her hands was our wedding photo, the one that had sat on that shelf for 15 years. The silver frame caught what little moonlight filtered through the window. She was sliding it behind the cabinet. I stayed frozen in the doorway, watching as she carefully pushed the frame further back, her movements deliberate and practiced. She'd done this before. When she turned, I quickly stepped back into the hallway shadows. She padded past me toward the guest room, never noticing my presence. My heart hammered as I waited for her footsteps to fade. Then I entered the kitchen, flipping on the lights as if I'd just arrived. Everything looked normal: coffee maker, fruit bowl, Grant's reading glasses on the counter. But that photo was gone. I made coffee with trembling hands, trying to process what I'd witnessed. Why would Vanessa hide our wedding photo? It showed Grant and me, young and radiant, standing outside the courthouse in Tacoma where we'd married in 1981. Nothing controversial, nothing embarrassing, just two people in love, beginning their lives together. When Grant woke at 7, I said nothing. When Ethan emerged at 8:30, greeting me with his usual "Morning, Mom," I smiled and poured him coffee. Vanessa appeared last, around 9:15, perfectly composed in athleisure wear, kissing my cheek as if she hadn't been sneaking around my kitchen hours earlier. "Sleep well?" I asked, watching her eyes. "Like a baby," she replied smoothly. "This mountain air always knocks me out." We spent the day normally farmers market, lunch at the marina, Ethan helping Grant repair the deck railing. But I couldn't stop thinking about that hidden photo. When they left Sunday afternoon, I waited exactly 10 minutes after their car disappeared down the drive. Going to check something in the kitchen, I told Grant, who was settling in with his crossword. The cabinet was heavier than expected. I had to brace my feet and pull steadily, my hip protesting, as it scraped away from the wall. I saw the photo frame first, faced backward against the wall. But there was more. Behind where the cabinet usually stood, someone had carefully cut away a section of drywall and replaced it with a piece of cardboard painted to match. I peeled it back with shaking fingers. Inside the hollow was a cache that made my blood run cold. A cheap flip phone, the kind drug dealers use on TV shows. Powered off, but definitely used scratches on the screen, worn corners. Next to it, a manila envelope containing photocopies of documents I couldn't immediately identify, though I recognized our bank's letterhead, a brass key that looked exactly like our house key, but shinier, newer a copy, and most disturbing, a small plastic bag of unmarked white pills, maybe 20 or 30 of them. I stood there, 68 years old, in my own kitchen, staring at objects that belonged in a crime drama, not in my life. My first instinct was to call Ethan, to demand an explanation. Then I remembered Vanessa's careful movements, her practiced ease at finding this hiding spot. They were in this together. I photographed everything with my phone, then carefully replaced each item exactly as I'd found it. The cardboard went back. The cabinet scraped into place. The wedding photo I left behind let them think their secret remained safe. That night, lying next to Grant, I stared at the ceiling and wondered what else I didn't know about my son and his wife. The boy I'd raised, who'd won science fairs and played Little League, who'd cried when our dog died and danced with me at his wedding. What had he become? And more importantly, what were they planning? Grant found me in the living room the next morning, staring at the photos on my phone. His weathered hands, still strong from decades of woodworking, gently took the device from me. As he scrolled through the images of the hidden cache, his jaw tightened. "We need to call the police," he said immediately. "This isn't right. Nora, that hidden compartment, those pills. And tell them what," I interrupted, "that our son and daughter-in-law are hiding things in our walls. We don't even know what those pills are. For all we know, they could be Vanessa's vitamins." Grant's expression told me he didn't believe that any more than I did. But I needed to be certain before taking any action that could destroy our relationship with Ethan forever. If there was an innocent explanation, though, I couldn't imagine what I wanted to find it first. "Give me a few days," I pleaded. "Let me figure out what's happening before we involve anyone else." That afternoon, while Grant reluctantly went to his workshop, I retrieved the burner phone from behind the cabinet. My hands shook as I found an old charger in the junk drawer that fit. The phone powered on with a cheerful chirp that felt obscene given the circumstances. No password protection, careless, or perhaps they never expected anyone to find it. The phone contained only one messaging app, with a single contact saved as Plan C. The conversation thread made my stomach turn to ice. Package delivered to location. Proceeding to Phase 2. Read a message from 3 weeks ago. The response, good. Remember, documentation is key. Every incident must be logged. I scrolled further back, my horror growing with each exchange. E confirmed the medical appointment for next Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Make sure she takes the morning dose. Increased to 15 ml. Any resistance? None. She trusts the vitamin story. Insurance review meeting scheduled. Need power of attorney activated within 60 days. Working on it? E says the house assessment came back at 800,000. My legs gave out. I sank onto the kitchen stool, struggling to breathe. E was clearly Ethan. The she they discussed with such clinical detachment was me, and the vitamins. I forced myself to keep reading, taking photos of every screen with my own phone. There were references to Dr. Hal Reeves, our family physician who'd treated us for 15 years. Mentions of memory incidents being staged and documented. A detailed timeline that ended with something called transition to facility. One message contained photo attachments. I opened them to find screenshots of what appeared to be password managers, showing login credentials for various accounts, some I recognized as ours, others unfamiliar. Another image showed a calendar with cryptic notations, document confusion grocery store. Recording at dinner topics past events. Bank interaction witness present. They were building a case against me. The last message, dated 2 days ago, chilled me most. Almost ready. Just need one more documented episode with witnesses. Sunday dinner. Sunday. Yesterday. When they'd visited, and I'd seemed perfectly normal. Had they been planning something that didn't happen? Or was I missing something that had? I carefully returned the phone to its hiding place. My mind racing. The logical part of me. The woman who'd managed library systems and organized community programs. Took over. I needed evidence. Real evidence. Not just suspicious messages between anonymous parties. That evening, I created a new email account on my laptop, one Grant and I had never shared with family. I uploaded all the photos there, then deleted them from my phone if Ethan had access to our accounts. He might be monitoring our devices too. "What did you find?" Grant asked when he came in for dinner. I showed him the printed screenshots I'd made. He read in silence, his face growing paler with each page. My God. Nora. They're trying to have me declared incompetent. I finished. Take control of our finances. Put me in a facility. But why? Grant's voice cracked. We've given Ethan everything. Paid for his college. Helped with his house down payment. The house, I said suddenly. Grant, what's this house worth now? He frowned, calculating. With the market lately, the waterfront location. Maybe 900,000. More if... He stopped. Understanding dawning. The inheritance. We'd been careful with money all our lives. Grant's furniture business, my library pension, careful investments we'd accumulated more than we ever spent. Add the house value, life insurance policies, retirement accounts. Ethan stood to inherit well over $1 million, but only after we died, or became incapacitated. I need to check our bank accounts, I said. We spent the next 2 hours online, examining every transaction, and there they were, small, irregular withdrawals from our joint checking. $50 here, $100 there. Nothing alarming individually, but over 6 months, nearly $3,000 had disappeared. How did we not notice? Grant asked. Because we trusted our son, I replied bitterly. And because the amounts were designed to fly under the radar, probably testing to see what they could get away with. Grant pulled out the folder where we kept important documents. Last year, he said slowly, when I had that minor surgery. Remember, Ethan insisted we sign temporary power of attorney, just in case something went wrong. You said it was limited, medical decisions only. That's what I thought. He found the document, read it carefully. God damn it. This isn't what I thought I signed. This gives him broad financial powers if either of us is deemed incapacitated. By a doctor, I added. Like Dr. Hal Reeves. We looked at each other, the full scope of the betrayal sinking in. Our son, our only child, was conspiring with his wife to steal our lives from us. Not just our money, but our autonomy, our dignity, our future. We stop this now, Grant said, standing up with the determination I'd fallen in love with decades ago. First thing tomorrow, we see a lawyer, a real one, not whoever Ethan might recommend. We protect ourselves. I nodded, but my mind was already moving ahead. Defense wasn't enough. They'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. Who knew what other groundwork they'd laid, what stories they'd told people about my declining mental state? No. We wouldn't just protect ourselves. We would expose them. The following Saturday arrived with unusual speed. Ethan had called midweek to confirm their visit, his voice carrying its normal warmth. Vanessa wants to try that new seafood place for lunch, he'd said, as if plotting my institutionalization was just another item on their weekend agenda. I'd prepared carefully. The small digital recorder I'd purchased fit perfectly in my cardigan pocket, invisible but ready. Grant had wanted to cancel their visit entirely, but I convinced him we needed to maintain the illusion of normalcy while gathering more evidence. They arrived at their usual time, 10:15 Vanessa, carrying a bouquet of yellow roses that she arranged in my good vase with practiced efficiency. Ethan hugged me, and I forced myself not to recoil from his touch. You look tired. Mom, he said, studying my face with what seemed like genuine concern. Have you been sleeping okay? The recorder was already running. Fine, I replied. Just the usual old age insomnia. Old age? Vanessa repeated, exchanging a quick glance with Ethan. You know, that reminds me. My colleague's mother started having sleep issues, and it turned out to be the beginning of, well, cognitive changes. Has Dr. Reeves done any assessments lately? There it was, the opening gambit. My last checkup was perfectly normal, I said mildly, pouring coffee with steady hands. But when was that? Ethan pressed. 6 months ago. A lot can change quickly at your age. I mean, at Mom's age. He caught himself, smiled apologetically. Sorry, that came out wrong. No, I thought. It came out exactly as you intended. Grant entered from the workshop, sawdust in his hair, despite my repeated reminders to use his cap. Vanessa wrinkled her nose slightly. She'd always been fastidious about cleanliness. Ethan was just suggesting I need cognitive testing, I told Grant, watching our son's face flush. I wasn't Mom. I'm just concerned. Last week when we called, you repeated the same story about the library twice. I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. But contradiction would only feed their narrative. Did I asked instead, letting a note of confusion enter my voice. I don't remember that. Another exchange of glances. Vanessa pulled out her phone, typing something quickly. Lunch at the seafood restaurant was a masterclass in manipulation. Vanessa kept asking me to remind her of things. What was the name of that volunteer you mentioned? Then gently correcting my accurate answers, as if I'd gotten them wrong. Ethan would support her version, creating a false reality where I appeared confused. No. Mom, you said her name was Sandra, not Susan. The library fundraiser was in June. not May. You told us Grant's surgery was on his left shoulder. It had been his right, and they knew it. Each correction was delivered with sympathetic concern, loud enough for nearby diners to hear. They were establishing witnesses to my supposed confusion. I played along, letting them think their gaslighting was working, while the recorder captured every word. Back at the house, Vanessa suggested we review some important paperwork. Just some updates to your insurance policies, she said smoothly, producing a folder from her designer bag. The companies need fresh signatures periodically. Grant reached for the papers, but Ethan intercepted. Actually, Dad, could you help me look at the car? That noise is getting worse. A divide and conquer strategy. But Grant caught my eye, nodded slightly, and followed Ethan outside, alone with Vanessa. I pretended to struggle reading the documents. My eyes aren't what they used to be, I mumbled, knowing she'd report this as another sign of decline. Let me help, she offered eagerly, pointing to signature lines. Just sign here, and here. I leaned close, squinting at the fine print. These weren't insurance updates. They were beneficiary change forms, power of attorney modifications, and something about medical decision-making authority, all designed to look routine, but fundamentally altering our legal protections. I should have Grant look at these, I said, pulling back. Oh, Nora. Vanessa's voice dripped condescension. You know how Grant is with paperwork. Besides, Ethan's already reviewed everything. You trust your son, don't you? That question, delivered with such calculated innocence, nearly broke my composure. Trust. The foundation of family, weaponized against me. Of course, I said. But I never sign anything without reading it fully. Old librarian habit. Her jaw tightened. Maybe we should discuss this with Dr. Reeves. These paranoid tendencies can be an early sign of wisdom. I finished. Years of wisdom telling me to be careful with legal documents. We stared at each other across my kitchen table. The pretense momentarily dropped. In her eyes, I saw cold calculation, a predator evaluating prey. She saw me as an obstacle to her comfortable future. Nothing more. Ethan's concerned about you, she said finally. We both are. The forgetfulness, the confusion about dates and names, the paranoia about simple paperwork. He's mentioned maybe having Dr. Reeves do a more thorough evaluation. Has he? I asked, noting how she'd just created a list of symptoms I'd never displayed. And what does Dr. Reeves say about patients he's never properly examined, showing supposed symptoms reported only by family members with financial interests? Her face went pale, then flushed red. How dare you suggest? I'm not suggesting anything, I said calmly. I'm just an old woman asking questions. Though I do wonder why you were hiding my wedding photo behind the cabinet last weekend. Such an odd thing to do in someone else's home. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. She knew I knew. But she also believed she held all the cards, the burner phone, the false documentation, the planted evidence of my supposed decline. I think you're confused, she said finally, voice steady again. I would never touch your belongings. Perhaps you moved it yourself and forgot that happens. You know, misplacing things, then creating false memories about what happened to them. Grant and Ethan returned then, ending our confrontation. But as they prepared to leave, Ethan pulled me aside. Mum, Vanessa told me about the paperwork confusion. I really think we should schedule something with Dr. Reeves, just to establish a baseline. Nothing serious. I patted his cheek. This child I'd raised, who now plotted my destruction. Whatever you think is best, dear. His relief was visible. They left believing their plan remained on track, that I was a confused old woman slowly succumbing to their manufactured decline. That night, I played the recording for Grant. His fists clenched as he listened to our son systematically lying, gaslighting, manipulating. "Monday morning," he said when it finished. "Lawyer first, then the bank, then the police." "Not the police," I said. "Not yet. We need more than recordings. We need them to really commit to their plan. Right now, it's all deniable. Concerned family members worried about an aging parent. We need proof of the pills, the forgery, the conspiracy." "How much more proof do you need?" Grant demanded. I thought of the hidden stash, the burner phone, the false documentation. "I need them to try to use it. When they make their real move, we'll be ready." Monday morning came grey and drizzly, matching my mood as I sat in Dr. Hal Reeves's waiting room. I'd called his office at 8 sharp, claiming I needed an urgent appointment. His receptionist, clearly instructed to accommodate me, had squeezed me in at 10:30. Grant had wanted to come, but I needed to do this alone. If Reeves was complicit, having a witness might make him more cautious. I wanted him off balance, unprepared. "Eleanor, Dr." Reeves greeted me with his usual warmth, though I noticed his eyes didn't quite meet mine. "Ethan mentioned you might be coming in." Of course he had. "Did he?" I asked, settling into the examination room chair. "What else did my son mention?" Reeves busied himself with his tablet, scrolling through what I assumed were my medical records. "He's concerned about some memory issues. Says you've been repeating stories, forgetting appointments." "Interesting," I said. "Which appointments have I forgotten?" He paused, fingers hovering over the screen. "Well, he didn't specify exactly. Because there weren't any." I interrupted. "Doctor, how long have you been my physician?" 15 years this December. "And in those 15 years, have I ever shown signs of cognitive decline?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Memory issues can develop quickly in patients your age." "That's not what I asked." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he sighed. "No, your cognitive assessments have always been normal." "Then why?" I asked, leaning forward. "Do my medical records apparently show otherwise?" His face went pale. "I don't know what you mean." "Ethan told me you've been documenting cognitive decline. Said you had video evidence of my confusion." "He brought me some recordings," Reeves admitted, not meeting my eyes. "Family members at dinner. You seemed confused about dates and names. Did you verify these recordings? Check if they were edited. Investigate whether I was being deliberately confused." "Eleanor, it's a yes or no question." "Doctor." "No," he said quietly. "I didn't verify them. I want to take a cognitive assessment. Right now. The full battery." He looked like he wanted to refuse, but couldn't find grounds. For the next hour, I completed every test he administered: memory recall, pattern recognition, verbal fluency, executive function tasks. I knew I was performing perfectly, and so did he. "Your results are completely normal," he said, staring at his tablet. "Actually, above average for your age group." "I want that in writing." and I want to see everything in my file related to cognitive concerns. I can't just... Yes, you can. It's my medical record. I have legal right to access it. Reluctantly, he printed the pages. There they were, notes about family-reported confusion, documented memory lapses per video evidence, recommend cognitive evaluation and possible intervention. All added in the last 3 months, all without ever examining me directly. This is insurance fraud, I said quietly. You've documented a diagnosis without proper examination. You've accepted third-party reports without verification. How much did they pay you? Nobody paid me anything. He protested, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Ethan was just concerned. He's your son. He's a financial analyst who stands to inherit everything if I'm declared incompetent. Did you know he has power of attorney that activates upon your recommendation? Reeves's hands shook as he reached for his prescription pad. I'll amend the records. Add today's assessment. You'll do more than that, I said, pulling out my phone to record. You'll write a detailed note stating that upon direct examination, you found no evidence of cognitive decline, that previous notes were based solely on unverified family reports. Date it, sign it, and give me a copy. He complied, his handwriting shaky. As he handed me the papers, he whispered, Ethan said you were paranoid, that you'd resist help, and you believed him over your own patient of 15 years. He was so convincing, had documents, recordings, specific incidents. Vanessa backed everything up. They seemed so concerned, so caring. They're planning to put me in a facility. Doctor, drain my accounts, take my home. And you were going to let them. Tears appeared in his eyes. I'm sorry. Eleanor, I truly thought. You didn't think. You assumed. An old woman's family says she's declining, so she must be... No need to actually verify. I left with copies of everything: his notes, my test results, his written retraction. From my car, I called Grant. How did it go? He asked anxiously. Reeves folded completely. We have documentation that he never properly examined me, just took Ethan's word. Good. Ainsley Crowder can use that. Speaking of which, she can see us at 2 p.m. Ainsley Crowder's law office occupied the second floor of a restored Victorian building downtown. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanour that immediately put me at ease. Mrs. Whitaker. Mr. Whitaker. She greeted us. I understand you have concerns about potential elder abuse. For the next hour, we laid out everything: the hidden cash, the burner phone messages, the gaslighting, the fraudulent medical records, the attempted document signing. Ainsley took notes rapidly, occasionally asking for clarification. This is extensive, she said finally. They've been building this case for months. The small bank withdrawals were likely tests. The medical documentation was groundwork. The power of attorney is the key once activated. They could move quickly. Can we stop them? Grant asked. We can do more than that. First, we revoke all existing power of attorney immediately. Second, we set up new financial protections, dual authorization for large withdrawals, alerts on all accounts. Third, we document everything with law enforcement. Not yet, I said. They'll claim it's all misunderstanding. Concerned family, confused elderly parent. We need irrefutable proof. Ainsley studied me. You want to catch them in the act? Yes. She smiled slightly. I like how you think. Here's what I suggest. We protect your assets immediately but quietly, change beneficiaries, add security protocols, but don't alert Ethan. Meanwhile, we work with law enforcement to set up surveillance. When they make their move, and they will, we're ready. What about the pills? Grant asked. Those unmarked pills in the hiding spot. We need them tested, but we can't disturb the crime scene. Do you still have the photos? I showed her. She studied them carefully. I have a contact at the police department, Detective Carla Monroe. She specializes in elder abuse cases. Very discreet, very thorough. With your permission, I'd like to bring her in. Grant and I exchanged glances, then nodded. Good. In the meantime, act normal. Let them think their plan is working. Can you do that? I thought of Ethan, my baby boy who'd become a stranger, of Vanessa, whose greed had poisoned my family, of all the elderly parents whose children betray them, whose final years are stolen by those they trust most. I can do more than that, I said. I can make them believe they've already won. Tuesday afternoon. Ainsley Crowder's conference room felt like a war room. Grant and I sat across from her, with Detective Carla Monroe beside her, a composed black woman in her 40s, with eyes that missed nothing. First priority is securing your assets, Ainsley began, sliding documents across the table. These revoke all existing power of attorney designations, effective immediately. We signed where indicated, each signature feeling like reclaiming a piece of ourselves. Next, financial protections. She produced another stack. Joint authorization required for any withdrawal over $500. Daily transaction alerts sent to both your phones and my office. Freeze on all beneficiary changes without in-person verification from both of you, plus legal counsel. What if they've already changed beneficiaries? Grant asked. I've checked. Ainsley replied. Insurance policies remain unchanged, though there's a pending modification request submitted last week. I've flagged it as potentially fraudulent. It won't process. Detective Monroe leaned forward. We need to discuss the criminal aspects, the unmarked pills, the forgery, the burner phone. This is conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud, possibly attempted poisoning depending on what those pills are. Can we test them without disturbing the hiding place? I asked. If you can get me just one pill, our lab can identify it. Monroe said. But we need to maintain the chain of evidence for the rest. There's more, Ainsley added. I've been researching Vanessa's private equity firm. It barely exists. 2 employees, no real investments, incorporated just 18 months ago. She's drowning in debt credit cards, personal loans. Her financial situation is desperate. That explained the urgency, the elaborate planning. This wasn't just greed, it was survival for Vanessa. What about security cameras? Monroe asked. Your home? We don't have any, Grant admitted. We're installing them, Monroe said firmly. Hidden ones in main areas, kitchen, living room, entry. All legal since it's your property. They'll record to a cloud server my department monitors. When? I asked. Tomorrow morning. My tech specialist will pose as a cable repair person. Ethan and Vanessa won't know. Ainsley pulled out her laptop. Let's review your will and estate plans. Any recent changes? Nothing in 5 years, Grant said. Good. I'm recommending we create a trust makes it much harder to challenge or manipulate. Also, I want to set up a specific directive if either of you is ever deemed incompetent. The evaluating physician must be court-appointed, not family-selected. Second opinions mandatory. We spent 2 hours restructuring everything. Our simple life had required simple plans. Now we needed fortress-level protection against our own son. About the journal, I said, remembering something. In the photos, there was a notebook, handwriting that looked like Ethan's. Monroe nodded. If we can match that handwriting to him, it's powerful evidence. Do you have samples of his writing? Birthday cards, thank you notes? I said. Years of them. Bring those to me. Our forensic analysts can compare. As we prepared to leave, Ainsley stopped us. One more thing. I'm setting up a code word system. If either of you ever calls my office and uses the phrase reviewing documents, that's your distress signal. We'll know you're under duress and respond accordingly. Do you think it could escalate that much? Grant asked. Monroe and Ainsley exchanged glances. When desperate people's plans fall apart, Monroe said carefully, they sometimes become dangerous. We're not trying to scare you, but preparation is important. That evening, I retrieved one pill from the hidden stash while Grant kept watch. My hands trembled as I used tweezers to extract a single white tablet, photographing its exact position first. Everything went back precisely as found. Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., a cable technician arrived. By noon, our house had 6 hidden cameras with night vision and motion activation. Monroe walked us through the monitoring app on our phones. Everything records to our secure server, she explained. Even if they find and destroy the cameras, we'll have the footage. Thursday brought another surprise. Ainsley called with news from her investigator. Vanessa's been visiting nursing homes, she said. 3 different facilities in the past month, all inquiring about memory care units for her mother-in-law. She's put deposits on 2 of them. Deposits. I felt sick. With what money? That's what we're trying to determine. But she's told them admission is imminent within the next 30 days. 30 days. They planned to have me locked away within a month. There's more, Ainsley continued. The investigator followed Ethan yesterday. He met with someone at a coffee shop, passed an envelope. We couldn't identify the recipient, but Ethan was photographed leaving a medical office building afterward, not Reeves's building, different doctor entirely. They were shopping for a more cooperative physician, one who would declare me incompetent without asking questions. Friday afternoon. Monroe called with the lab results. The pill is haloperidol, she said. It's an antipsychotic. In elderly patients without psychosis, it can cause confusion, sedation, muscle rigidity. Basically, it would make you appear to have dementia. They were going to poison me, I said flatly. That's exactly what they were planning. This changes everything. Eleanor, this is attempted poisoning. With the other evidence, we're looking at serious felony charges. When do we arrest them? Grant demanded. Soon, Monroe promised. But I want them on camera actually attempting something. The journal, the pills, the plans. It's all circumstantial without catching them in the act. That night, unable to sleep, I stood in my kitchen staring at the cabinet that hid such betrayal. 43 years of marriage, 38 years of motherhood, all leading to this, a son who would poison his mother for money. Grant found me there at 3 a.m. Wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. We did everything right, I whispered. Loved him, supported him, gave him everything. Sometimes, Grant said quietly, people choose darkness despite being raised in light. This is Ethan's choice, not our failure. Saturday morning, Ethan called. Mum, Vanessa and I want to take you both to dinner tomorrow. That new Italian place. Our treat. That sounds lovely. I lied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Great, oh. And Mum? Could you bring those insurance papers Vanessa left? She realized she gave you the wrong ones. Of course, dear. After I hung up, I called Ainsley, using our code phrase. I'll be reviewing documents tomorrow night. Understood, she said simply. Everything will be ready. The trap was set. Tomorrow, at dinner. They would make their move, and we would be ready. I spent the rest of Saturday organizing evidence, backing up files, preparing for war disguised as a family dinner. The woman who'd stood frozen watching her daughter-in-law hide a wedding photo was gone. In her place stood someone harder, someone who understood that sometimes the people we love most become the ones we must fight hardest. Tomorrow, the masks would finally come off. Tomorrow, my son would learn what happens when you underestimate a librarian who spent her life cataloguing details, organizing systems, and reading between the lines. Tomorrow, we would end this. Sunday arrived crisp and clear, one of those perfect Pacific Northwest autumn days that made the coming betrayal feel even more surreal. Ethan and Vanessa arrived at 5:30 p.m. 30 minutes early, unusual for them. We brought wine, Vanessa announced, producing an expensive bottle of Cabernet. And something special for you, Nora. She handed me an elegant gift bag. Inside was a bottle of vitamins. These are specifically formulated for women over 65. My nutritionist swears by them. How thoughtful, I said, noting the bottle's seal had been broken and re-glued. Amateur work visible if you knew to look. Grant accepted the wine, but I noticed him palm the cork after opening it. Later, he'd slip it to Detective Monroe for testing. We'd prepared for everything. Before we head to dinner, Ethan said, settling into the living room, we should talk about something important. Here it came. Mom, Dad, Vanessa and I have been discussing your future. This house is too much for you both. The stairs, the maintenance, the isolation out here. We manage fine, Grant interrupted. For now, Vanessa said smoothly. But what happens when you can't, when Nora's memory issues get worse? What memory issues? I asked, letting confusion colour my voice, but different from the confusion they wanted to see. Ethan pulled out his phone. Mum, you've been forgetting things? Last week, you called me 3 times asking about the same library event. I hadn't called him once last week. The lies came so easily to him now. I did. And there's the confusion about medications. Vanessa added, Dr. Reeves is concerned. He is... I reached for the water glass I'd placed strategically near Vanessa. My hand trembled, knocking it over. Water splashed across her designer dress. Oh. She jumped up, dabbing at the fabric. Do you have club soda? In the kitchen? I said. She hurried out, and I heard her rummaging in the refrigerator. The camera would catch if she did anything to our food or drinks. While she was gone, Ethan pressed harder. We've found a wonderful community. Mom, assisted living, but very upscale. You'd have your own apartment, activities, medical care on site. That sounds expensive, Grant said. Insurance covers most of it. Ethan lied smoothly. And the house sale would handle the rest. You'd actually have money left over. Vanessa returned, having changed into a spare blouse she apparently kept in her car, always prepared. That one. Should we head to dinner? she suggested. Our reservation is at 6:30. Actually, I said, I'm not feeling well. Could we just order in? I have those insurance papers you wanted. Ethan, we could handle that here. They exchanged glances. This wasn't the plan, but the mention of papers hooked them. Of course, Ethan said. Whatever you're comfortable with. Mom. We ordered Chinese. Grant insisted on picking it up himself, maintaining control of our food. While he was gone, I retrieved the folder Vanessa had left last week, making sure to fumble with it, drop a few pages, appear confused about which documents were which. Here, let me help. Vanessa offered eagerly, practically snatching the folder. She quickly organized the papers, the real insurance documents I'd substituted for her fraudulent ones, and found the signature pages. Just sign here, she instructed, pointing. Standard updates. I picked up the pen, then paused. What am I signing exactly? Mom, we explained this, Ethan said with exaggerated patience. Insurance updates. Nothing major. I started to sign, then stopped again. This doesn't feel right. Grant should look at these. For God's sake. Vanessa's composure cracked. Just sign the damn papers. Nora. The mask slipping. Vanessa? Ethan warned. She took a breath, forced a smile. I'm sorry. It's just, we're trying to help you, and you're making it so difficult. Am I? I looked directly at her. Or are you making things difficult by hiding wedding photos behind cabinets and keeping burner phones in my walls? Dead silence. Then Ethan laughed, forced, hollow. Mum, what are you talking about? You're confused. Am I? Should we check behind the cabinet together? Vanessa stood abruptly. I need to use the bathroom. Sit down, I commanded, my voice suddenly steel. Both of you. They froze, perhaps hearing their real mother for the first time in months. You think I'm some senile old woman you can manipulate? I continued. You think those vitamins you brought laced with haloperidol would make me compliant? You think forged documents and false medical records would let you lock me away while you drain our accounts? Mom, Ethan started. I'm not finished. The burner phone, Plan C, the meetings with nursing homes, the deposits Vanessa paid with money stolen from our accounts, we know everything. Vanessa grabbed her purse. We're leaving. No, I said calmly. You're not. As if on cue, Grant returned not with Chinese food, but with Detective Monroe and 2 uniformed officers. Ethan Whitaker, Vanessa Cole. Monroe announced, You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, attempted poisoning, fraud, and theft. This is insane, Ethan shouted. She's confused. Tell them, Mum? Tell them you're confused. I stood, pulled out the digital recorder from my pocket, and played a snippet of their earlier conversation about the assisted living facility. Everything's recorded, I said quietly. Every visit, every lie, every manipulation. The cameras caught Vanessa doctoring our drinks. We have the pills tested haloperidol. We have your forged documents, your fraudulent medical records, your conspiracy documented in that burner phone. Vanessa lunged for the kitchen toward the hidden stash, but an officer blocked her path. We already have it all in evidence, Monroe informed her. The phone, the pills, the documents, the journal with your handwriting detailing the plan. As the officers cuffed them, Ethan looked at me with tears streaming down his face. But they weren't tears of remorse, they were tears of rage at being caught. You were supposed to be too old to figure it out, he spat, Too trusting. Too weak. "I'm your mother," I replied. "I taught you to read, to write, to think. Did you really believe I couldn't read between your lines?" Vanessa said nothing, just stared at me with undisguised hatred. As they were led out, Ethan turned one last time. "I'm your only child. You're really going to do this?" "You stopped being my child the day you decided I was just an obstacle to money," I said. "My real child, the boy I raised, would never have done this." The door closed behind them. Grant pulled me into his arms as I finally let myself cry, not for what we'd lost, but for what we'd never really had. The son we thought we knew had been gone long before this nightmare began. Monroe stayed behind to collect final evidence. "You did everything perfectly," she said. "The recording, the substituted documents, maintaining the chain of evidence textbook. 40 years of organizing library systems," I said weakly. "I know how to catalogue and cross-reference." She smiled. "They'll likely plea bargain, but they're looking at significant time. The attempted poisoning alone carries a 15-year maximum." After everyone left, Grant and I stood in our kitchen, looking at the cabinet that had hidden so much betrayal. Monday morning came too soon. Grant and I had barely slept, sitting in our living room as if keeping vigil over the death of our family as we'd known it. At 8 a.m., Detective Monroe called. "I need you both to come to the station. We're executing search warrants on Ethan's house and Vanessa's office. You might be able to identify additional evidence." The police station felt surreal. Our son was somewhere in this building, in a cell. Monroe led us to a conference room where boxes of seized materials waited. "We pulled these from behind the cabinet after you left," she said, opening the first box. "There's more than you saw initially." She was right. Beyond the original stash, they'd found a second hidden compartment cut deeper into the wall. Inside were more documents, printed emails between Vanessa and someone named Derek discussing the package and timeline for transition. There were photographs of me taken without my knowledge at the grocery store, the library, getting into my car. Each photo had notes on the back, looked confused, struggled with keys. Repeated question to Clark. All fabricated observations, creating a false narrative. "This is stalking," Grant said, his voice shaking with rage. "Yes," Monroe agreed. "Additional charges. But there's something else you need to see." She pulled out a leather journal, Vanessa's handwriting filling every page. I read with growing horror. Week 12, E's mother remains resistant. Increased dose to 20 mg, but she metabolizes it too quickly. Need to research alternative delivery methods. Week 15, practice session with Dr. M went well. He'll testify she needs immediate intervention if we provide the video clips. Cost $15,000. Week 18, E getting cold feet about the pills. Reminded him of the debt. $300,000 and climbing. This is our only option. $300,000 in debt. My son had been desperate enough to poison me for money. Monroe turned to a tabbed section. This part is particularly damning. The pages detailed their exact plan for Sunday night. The drugged vitamins were meant to make me appear disoriented at dinner. They'd hired someone to pose as a doctor at the restaurant, ready to declare a medical emergency and recommend immediate hospitalization. The papers I was to sign included voluntary commitment forms mixed in with insurance documents. "They planned to have you institutionalized last night," Monroe said quietly. "If you'd gone to that restaurant, I would have disappeared into their carefully chosen facility, drugged into compliance, while they sold everything Grant and I had built. "Can we see what was at their house?" I asked. Monroe pulled out another box. "Your son kept extensive records, financial documents, mostly." The papers told a story of staggering irresponsibility. Ethan had been living far beyond his means for years: luxury car leases, expensive vacations, gambling debts barely concealed as investment losses. Vanessa's failed business had hemorrhaged money, funded by credit cards and personal loans in both their names. "Look at this," Grant pointed to a bank statement. "They're 6 months behind on their mortgage." "But Ethan makes good money," I said. "How could they?" "Lifestyle inflation," Monroe explained. "They spent assuming future inheritance. When that didn't materialize fast enough, they made a plan to accelerate it." There were printed emails between Ethan and Vanessa dating back 2 years, discussing the parent problem. My son had referred to us as the obstacles for 2 years. Deeper in the box, we found more surveillance photos, but these were different pictures of our house's interior, taken when we weren't home. Our bedroom, Grant's workshop, even inside our closets and drawers. "They used that spare key to case your house," Monroe said. "Looking for valuables, documents, anything useful." The violations kept multiplying. They'd been in our home, touching our things, planning our destruction while we slept. "There's one more thing," Monroe said carefully. "We found this on Vanessa's computer." She handed me a printed web page, a life insurance policy application in my name for $2 million, with Ethan as sole beneficiary. The signature was a decent forgery of mine. "When was this dated?" I asked. 3 weeks from now. They were going to backdate it after you were gone. After they killed me." The room spun. Grant caught my arm, steadied me. "They weren't just planning to institutionalize you," Monroe said gently. "The haloperidol was phase 1. We found searches on Vanessa's computer for drug interactions fatal to elderly and accidental overdose statistics nursing homes. My son hadn't just planned to steal from me, he'd planned to murder me." I stood abruptly, needing air, needing space from this evidence of calculated evil. In the hallway, I nearly collided with Ainsley Crowder. "Eleanor, I was coming to find you," she said. "Ethan wants to see you." "Absolutely not," Grant said behind me. "He says he'll confess to everything if he can speak to his mother first." Ainsley continued. "It's your choice, but a confession would spare you a trial." A trial? Testifying against my own son, reliving this betrayal in public. "I'll do it," I said. The visiting room was sterile, fluorescent lights harsh against grey walls. Ethan sat behind reinforced glass, orange jumpsuit replacing his usual preppy attire. He looked younger somehow, like the boy who'd once cried over scraped knees. I picked up the phone. "Mom," he started, then stopped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Why?" I finally asked. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." He laughed bitterly. "You and Dad, living in your little bubble, volunteer work and furniture making? You have no idea what real life costs now, what it takes to succeed." "So, you decided to poison me?" "It wasn't supposed to." He stopped, ran his hand through his hair. "Vanessa said it would just make you confused enough to sign the papers. Then we'd stop the pills, and you'd recover in the facility. No permanent harm. And the $2 million life insurance policy." His face went white. "You found that?" "We found everything. Ethan, Every document, every photo, every search history. I know what you planned to do after you locked me away. That was Vanessa's idea. Stop, I said sharply. Stop blaming her. You're 38 years old. You made choices. You chose debt over discipline. You chose greed over family. You chose to poison your mother rather than face your failures. You don't know what it's like, he exploded. Watching you sit on all that money while we're drowning. Do you know what it's like to have colleagues think you're successful when you can't even make minimum payments, to have everyone expect things you can't afford? So you decided to murder me for appearances. I wasn't going to. He stopped, defeated. I don't know. I don't know what I was going to do. Yes, you do? You planned every detail for months. You just never planned on getting caught. Silence stretched between us. Are you going to testify against me? He asked finally. If I have to. I'm your son. No, I said, standing. My son died somewhere along the way. You're just the stranger who took his place. I hung up the phone and walked away, not looking back as he called after me, in the hallway. Ainsley waited. He'll confess, I told her. He'll blame Vanessa, but he'll confess. And he did. That afternoon, both Ethan and Vanessa signed confessions, each trying to minimize their role while implicating the other. The detective had been right. They'd turn on each other instantly when faced with consequences. Grant and I went home to our empty house, our violated sanctuary. We stood in the kitchen, looking at the cabinet that had started it all. We need to move, Grant said. No, I replied. They don't get to steal our home too. We stay. We heal. We reclaim what's ours. That evening, as the sun set over the Puget Sound, I pulled out our wedding photo from behind the cabinet and placed it back on its shelf. Grant and I, young and hopeful, smiled back at me from 43 years ago. We'd survived this. We'd survived our son's betrayal. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. 3 months had passed since that Sunday evening confrontation, and now we sat in the gallery as Judge Patricia Hernandez read the charges. Ethan and Vanessa, in their respective defendant chairs, hadn't looked at each other once. Their plea bargains had fallen apart when prosecutors discovered the full extent of their crimes. The attempted murder planning, the stalking, the elaborate fraud, it all added up to potential decades in prison. Eleanor Whitaker, the prosecutor called. Please take the stand. I dreaded this moment, but as I placed my hand on the Bible, I felt oddly calm. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. For 2 hours, I detailed everything, finding the hidden cash, discovering their plan, the slow realization that my son wanted me dead. I presented the evidence methodically, like cataloguing books at the library. Facts, not emotions. Mrs. Whitaker, Ethan's defense attorney asked during cross-examination, isn't it true you never actually ingested these alleged pills? Only because I discovered them first, I replied. The plan was documented in your client's own handwriting. You're 68 years old. Isn't it possible you misunderstood your son's genuine concern? I looked directly at Ethan then. He couldn't meet my eyes. Concern doesn't require burner phones, forged documents, and haloperidol. I said simply. Vanessa's testimony was a masterclass in blame shifting. Everything was Ethan's idea, she claimed. She was just trying to support her husband. The tears she cried looked real, but I'd seen her practice crying in my bathroom mirror, another detail caught on our hidden cameras. Ethan's testimony was worse. He painted himself as overwhelmed, manipulated by Vanessa's expensive tastes, driven to desperation. He actually used the phrase, loving son, pushed too far. Grant had to leave the courtroom during that part. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Ethan's shoulders shook. Vanessa stared straight ahead, stone-faced. Judge Hernandez scheduled sentencing for the following month, as court officers led them away. Ethan turned to me one last time. His lips formed the word, "Mom," but no sound came out. The sentencing hearing was brief. Vanessa got 12 years with possibility of parole in 7. The judge called her calculating and remorseless. Ethan got 15 years, with possibility of parole in 9. The attempted murder planning, combined with the betrayal of parental trust, warranted the harsher sentence. "Mr. Whitaker," Judge Hernandez said, looking at Ethan, "you held your mother's heart in your hands and chose to crush it for money. There is no greater violation of family trust. Your parents gave you life, love, and opportunity. You repaid them with betrayal that nearly cost your mother her life." As they led him away in shackles, I felt nothing. The son I'd mourned was already gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. "Mrs. Whitaker, how does it feel to see your son sentenced to prison? Like watching a stranger face consequences for hurting someone I loved." I answered. Ainsley guided us to her car, away from the cameras. "You both did incredibly well. I know that wasn't easy." "What happens to their house?" Grant asked. "Their things." "Foreclosure proceedings have started. Their assets will be liquidated to pay their debts. You won't see a penny of restitution. They owe too much to too many people." "We didn't want their money anyway. We wanted our lives back." 6 months later, Grant and I stood in our kitchen, preparing dinner together. We'd repaired the wall behind the cabinet, painted over the wounds in our home. The hidden cameras were gone. The locks changed again this time just for peace of mind. We'd started therapy, both individual and couples counseling. Dr. Sarah Kim helped us process not just the betrayal, but the guilt. What signs had we missed? How had our son become capable of such evil? "Sometimes," she said, "people make choices that have nothing to do with how they were raised and everything to do with who they choose to become. You can't take responsibility for Ethan's choices." Slowly, we'd begun to believe her. We changed our will, leaving everything to charity, the library where I'd volunteered, Grant's woodworking program for at-risk youth, organizations that helped elderly victims of family fraud. If we had no family to inherit, we'd create a different legacy. One evening, while sorting through old photos, I found one of Ethan at 5 years old, grinning with his first lost tooth. Grant reached for it, but I pulled it back. "No," I said. "That child deserves to be remembered. He was real, even if the man he became wasn't who we thought." We kept the photo, tucked in an album we rarely opened, a memorial to the son we'd actually had, not the one who'd tried to destroy us. Detective Monroe visited occasionally, updating us on the case's impact. "Your story has helped 3 other families recognize similar schemes," she told us. "You've saved lives by speaking up." That helped, knowing our pain had purpose. On the first anniversary of the arrests, Grant and I renewed our vows. Not in a big ceremony, just the 2 of us, our minister, and Ainsley as witness. We promised to protect each other, to trust each other, to face whatever came next together. "For 44 years," Grant said, You've been my anchor. When our son tried to destroy us, you became our warrior. I love you more today than on our first wedding day. I thought about Vanessa hiding our original wedding photo, trying to erase our history. She'd failed. We were still here, still standing, still choosing each other. The last time I saw Ethan was on television, a news segment about prison reform. He was thinner, older looking, speaking about rehabilitation programs. He didn't mention his parents or his crimes. I turned it off before he finished. Vanessa, I heard through Ainsley, had been transferred to minimum security after 2 years. Model prisoner, apparently. She'd always been good at playing roles. Neither had tried to contact us. The restraining orders Ainsley had secured guaranteed they couldn't, even after release. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if Ethan ever truly felt remorse. Not the regret of getting caught, but genuine sorrow for what he'd done to us. I'd never know. And perhaps that was for the best. Grant and I sold the house eventually, not because they'd driven us out, but because we wanted something smaller, easier. We found a cottage closer to town, with a garden and a small workshop for Grant. No hidden spaces in the walls, no room for secrets. On moving day, I stood in the empty kitchen one last time. The cabinet that had started everything was gone, donated to charity. The wall behind it was just a wall. "Ready?" Grant asked, taking my hand. "Ready?" I said. We walked out together, leaving the past behind. My wedding photo, the one Vanessa had tried to hide, was the last thing I packed and the first thing I hung in our new home. They'd tried to erase my memories, my life, my very self. Instead, they'd only revealed their own darkness while making Grant and me stronger. We'd survived our son's betrayal. We'd protected ourselves when family became predator. We'd chosen truth over comfortable lies. You know what I realized? I told Grant that first night in our new home. They wanted to erase me, but instead, they erased themselves from our lives. We're still here. They're the ones who disappeared. He kissed my forehead. You outsmarted them at every turn. I'm a librarian, I said. I know how to read between the lines, even when those lines are written by someone I used to call son. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts on this story. Your support means everything.